Now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That's the go-getter energy that moves all of us to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. We put all this together in one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one show, one book. This masterclass here that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. Today's topic is how to not react to online agitators. Now, we just yesterday, talked about how to not be bullied in life. This could happen online, but today we're talking about the agitators, whether that be somebody who is trolling you, maybe it's somebody who you actually know, who for whatever reason made me there kind of excited about what's going on in certain situations, or they just have an opinion about something that you did or something that you said or something they think you represent or whatever. Maybe it's just an individual having a bad day and they're just looking for trouble. They're just looking for a problem. How do you control your reaction impulse when it comes to dealing with these online agitators? And depending on how much time you spend online or how much you share, online, how popular you are online, how much your opinions spread online, eventually somebody's going to disagree with you. Somebody's going to have something to say about you, about your work, about someone you're connected to. And today is about how to dismiss those agitators mentally and dismiss them like literally and maintain your peace of mind at the exact same time. Now, in episode number 708, that masterclass topic was how to deal with trolls or not. So anytime you have somebody just trolling you in whatever way, in real life or online, listen to that masterclass, refer to that one about how to deal with the trolls. Today is about how to deal with the online agitators. They may not be trolling you. They may just be somebody who just they're just looking for a battle online and you're not interested in that battle. How do you deal with these people while at the same time maintaining your calm, your zen? All right, point number one. Topic once again is how to not react to online agitators. Number one, do not stoop to their level. I talked about this in the episode on the bullies just yesterday. It's the same what I said there. Many people have only one mode of communication. Some people can only communicate in one way. That's the only communication that they've ever received in their life. So therefore, it's the only level of communication that they understand. They cannot understand any other languages. They can only speak in that language. The only way they know how to speak is to attack someone and to look for battle because that's what someone did to them. So that's what they feel like they had to do to everybody else. Again, they're not doing it quote unquote on purpose, like they're just trying to find a battle or an attack, but that's the only thing that they know. So I guess they kind of are doing it on purpose, but not in a malicious way. They're just communicating in the only way that they are even aware that it's possible to communicate. And as I told you, studies have shown that the more narrow a person's vocabulary, the less options they have for response, less options they have for action, less options they have for the way that they think, the smaller the way that they see things in life. This is the only thing that they have. So if you reply to someone who seems to be coming at you in this way, be objective and strain to see the actual message in what that person says, ignoring their ignorance. Now, this takes a little bit of discipline. Not responding to an online agitator will require discipline because you're going to have to ignore their ignorance. You're going to have to ignore the way that they're talking and resist the temptation to throw fire at somebody who's spitting fire at you. So if you reply and engage with this person, be objective, meaning talk specifically about what they're talking about. See the actual message in what they're saying. Ignore the attack, ignore whatever, if that person's trying to get personal with you, if they're trying to, they're doing any kind of ignorance, or whatever you consider to be ignorance. All right, learn to pardon those people's lack of sense, ignore their ignorance, and stay objective, stay on the message if you want to actually engage at all. Now, if you don't want to engage, all you had to do is simply remove that person from your orbit by using the mute button or the block button or whatever the button is that gets rid of a person from being able to contact you online. Every platform has it because every platform knows that they're going to need it. The worst thing you can do, since I'm giving you options here, the worst thing you can do when someone is trying to agitate with you online is to throw negative energy back at them, because what it's going to do, first of all, you're playing their game. And if this doesn't happen to be your game, this doesn't happen to be your area of expertise, getting into that kind of energy with other people, first of all, you're probably going to lose because you're playing a game that you're not comfortable playing, you're not used to. Second of all, you are starting an energy draining cycle of actions that will produce nothing tangible and useful for you. I don't think that's something you'd be interested in. If you're trying to produce an energy draining cycle of actions that don't happen, that don't work for you at all, I don't know why you'd be doing it. Why would you be listening to a show called Work on Your Game? You're just trying to waste energy and waste time on things that don't do anything for you. It wouldn't make sense. It would be incongruent you listening to this show and wanting that as an outcome. So I'm going to assume that's not what you want. Point number 2. Today's topic is how to not react to online agitators. Second thing, when you engage, if you decide to, avoid accusation, mind reading, and presumption. 3 things you should definitely avoid anytime you're engaging with anybody online or offline. Again, those 3 things: accusation, mind reading, and presumption. Often they travel in a package, or they often come in a bundle, or as a package deal, these 3. If you see one of them in a person, you usually see the other 2. Do not assume that you know something about a person when you don't know it. I mean, that's a simple enough concept, right? If you don't know something about someone, ask them, maybe do some research if there's some research to be done, or just remain objective knowing that you don't know. But do not assume that you know something about someone just based on some other circumstantial data. I was on social media one day when the topic was, I forget who I was responding to something someone had said, and a person, obviously a white guy, he said something about, well, your agenda obviously is this, this, and this. And I said, well, what are you talking about? Where'd you even get that from? And he said, well, your people, and he was referring to Black Lives Matter is what he was referring to. And that's why I'm pretty much sure that he was white. That's an assumption that I'm making, because he was assuming that because I was black that I happen to agree with certain movements or certain things. I don't know why he was thinking that, when it's clear there are a lot of people who are not on board with certain things despite whatever color they may be, especially people of color in our culture. But anyway, I responded back to him and let him know, listen, I don't have an agenda, and the things that you're saying I actually do not go with. And I actually referred him to a couple episodes of this very show as proof. Episodes that came out way before any of the racial stuff started happening in America. I mean, racial stuff has been happening, but the stuff that's blown up recently, I sent him some episodes that came out way before that to let him know, listen, I'm not the person that you think I am. I don't have the opinions that you assume that I'm having. You're probably assuming them because I'm black, but I don't have those opinions. And he replied back and said, okay, classy response. He gave me a compliment. It was a classy response because I stayed above his level. I avoided going to where he was at, where he was trying to accuse me of something. He was claiming he could read my mind. He was presuming that I had a certain opinion just because of the way that I looked or what my name was or whatever, wherever he was getting his information. He didn't have much of it. But do not assume you know something about a person when you don't. All right, this is a pernicious habit of people who use social media often. They assume they know the thoughts that causes a person's statement. Somebody says something, and then there are people who will presume, oh, I know what you're thinking because of what you said, which is impossible. You can't know what another person is thinking. Or because somebody said something or because they did something, you assume that they must also believe something else and something else and something else because they believe this one thing, or because they said this one thing, because they did this one thing, or you know this one thing about them. Do not do this. People do this every single day in all of life. We presume that we can read another person's mind. We jump to a conclusion. We make a leap from one thing that we know to be factually true about a person, and that's the only factual thing we know about them. Then we make these leaps. Oh, because we know this to be a fact, that means this also is a fact, and this got to be a fact, and this also has to be a fact. And this works really well on social media. This is the key here, because this is a very, very useful tool. If you want to get yourself popular, you want to get a mob behind you, you want to get a whole bunch of people co-signing what you're saying on social media, this works really well to mind read and to presume and to make these leaps from one fact to this assumption, to this assumption, to this thing that must be true. Even though they're not true, they're not objective, they are very subjective, they are often incorrect, and it really shows a person's lack of maturity and lack of objectivity and just lack of ability to think when they start doing these things. But listen, social media is not the library. All right, social media is a place where people can gather, turn off their brains, not have to think too hard, and just be entertained. So you got to remember where you're at if you're going to engage on social media. Do not be the people who make these leaps from one factual piece of information to a bunch of other things that, quote, must be facts, close quote, based on the one thing that you know. This requires a healthy level of discipline, because this tactic, as I said, this will work very well on social media. You want to become super popular on social media by demonizing a certain group. Just do the opposite of everything that I'm saying here in point number 2. All right. It works really well there, and you can get a mob behind you, or if you already have a mob behind you, I guarantee this will work. So now you know both the good and the bad uses of this, so hopefully you don't use it for the wrong reason. The mob, here's the thing about the mob. When you get a social media mob behind you, or you already have a mob and you're weaponizing that mob to attack a certain person, to attack a certain belief or a certain position or what have you. The challenge with the mob is this. They're usually a bunch of sheep. You know what sheep are? The animal, that's what I'm talking about. The mob is usually a bunch of sheep. And you know who sheep are on social media? They are people who do not think and who blindly repeat what they hear. That's who sheep are. They don't think, they just follow the leader. Whatever you tell them, they'll accept it. Wherever you go, they'll follow, and they will walk straight into the slaughterhouse, as I've said before about sheep. All right, leading is a good thing. It's a good thing to be a leader. I've done 30 masterclasses on leadership here on this show. But the question when you're leading, sometimes you got to turn around and look at the people you're leading and ask yourself, who's following me? Because if the people who are following you are a bunch of sheep who don't think, don't have anything to offer to a conversation, they don't really bring anything useful to the table, but they're part of your mob that is following you, who are you really leading? Are you really leading if you're leading a bunch of people who will follow anything and anybody as long as it was entertaining enough or ignorant enough, or it relieved them of any responsibility enough? Is that really what you want to be following? Because see, the thing about being a leader is you create other leaders. So who's going to come out of that group of the people who are following you? People in your mob, your tribe, who's going to come out of that group that you would be proud to say, all right, this is one of the results of what I did. All right, this person is a result of learning from me. If you look around at the people who are following you and you don't see too many emerging leaders in your group, then you need to question yourself. Who are you attracting? Who are the people who are coming around you? Because if you're attracting the wrong types of people, well, that's to say something about the kind of energy you're putting out. I talked about this in masterclass number 1087, how to have energy that attracts good things to you. Also, masterclass number 185 from back in 2016, leadership. Who are you attracting and why? I suggest you go listen to 185 today so you can understand what I mean when I say having a mob behind you is one thing, but if you got a mob of sheep behind you, all right, can that army really do anything to help you? Probably not. Point number 3, today's topic is how to not react when you're dealing with online agitators or they try to deal with you. Remember something. When people talk about other people, especially in a positive or a negative way, when you hear someone talking about another person who is not present, maybe the person who is present, the speaker is saying a lot more about themselves than they are about the target. When you talk about another person, you are saying a whole lot more about who you are than you are about who they are. So when an online agitator makes some kind of statement, something negative, something incendiary, whatever you consider it about you, one of the best, most effective tactics you can use is to let that statement sit and not push back against it. Just let it sit there. Let them say what they said and just let it sit there quietly. Because what happens is, first of all, the agitator has nothing to push back against. When a person tries to attack you and agitate and you don't attack back, what happens is that person runs out of steam and everything that they wanted to put out there, it just completely dies down. There is no return energy for them to fight back against. And if you don't offer people a target to aim at, then they usually just stop aiming. They usually stop shooting their bullets because they don't know where they're going. This requires, as I talked about already, a high level of personal discipline from you, because usually when one of us is attacked, especially if you feel like you were wrongly attacked or you feel like what somebody said was completely out of line, your normal response, being a human being, and again, can be different levels depending on your personality, is to go right back at that person. But the payoff, when you can discipline yourself to not go back at them, is you will have, over time, fewer and fewer people ever coming at you because they realize that coming at you is not going to get them what they want, which is the return fire, which gives them some energy to push back against. If you give people nothing to push back against, they will stop pushing because there's no resistance. It's hard to push when there's no resistance at all. You can't push the air. You can push a weight, you can push another person, you can push against something that will move. You can't push against the empty air because the air is not offering you any resistance. There's no energy to push back with. You got to find something that's going to push back against you. So if you offer people no targets, they'll stop shooting. Jay-Z is a good example of this. Maybe not these days since he's he's further deeper into the game as far as music goes. He doesn't put out music as actively, but when Jay-Z was actively rapping, there were many times a rapper would diss Jay-Z or try to attack Jay-Z, not because Jay-Z was doing anything wrong, but because he was the biggest name in rap. So rappers would come at him because they saw an opportunity for themselves. Hey, if I can get Jay-Z to attack me now, I become more visible, and now more people are going to notice me. So they were trying to basically using Jay-Z to get more attention for themselves. But one thing about Jay-Z is he very rarely responded to other people. There were a few times that he did, and there were a few highlight level times when he engaged with other people, but oftentimes he ignored anytime somebody would come at him. He even rapped about it in his songs. How people would come at him, he would just not respond and just allow that person to stay in the oblivion that they were in, to stay the nobodies and the irrelevant individuals that they were. He didn't offer them any relevance by responding to them. You have to develop that level of discipline and that level of, there's a certain word that I'm looking for here that is escaping me, but when that level of dignified response is no response. Just let that person sit there, say what they said, and people are going to get excited about it when they first say it, but when they realize that you're not giving any energy back to it, people will ignore it because there's nothing to pay attention to. If there's no response and there's nothing to pay attention to, people will quickly go find something else to entertain them. Let's recap today's class, which is how to not react to the online agitators. Depending on how popular you or your opinions are or how active you are, you will face some agitators. Today is about how to dismiss them and maintain your presence of mind. Number one, don't stoop to their level. Many people have only one mode of communication. So if you reply to them, be objective, see the actual message in what they're saying, ignore the ignorance. And if you don't want to reply, remove them from your orbit by using the block button. All right. You don't want to throw negativity back at them because it will start a cycle of energy draining that produces nothing positive for you. Number two, avoid accusation, mind reading, and presumption. The three most useful tools of the online agitator / idiot. Do not assume you know something about somebody when you don't, because this works really well on social media. Do not be those people. This requires a high level of discipline, because these tactics work really well on social media when there's a mob following a person. But look at the mob who's following you when you're using these tools, and you got a bunch of sheep, people who do not think, people who do not read, and people who are lazy. They just wait for somebody to tell them what to think. If you notice that this is what your audience is, then what kind of audience are you actually cultivating? And how many leaders do you think will emerge from that? Point number three, remember that when people talk about others, it says more about the speaker than it does the target. So let their statements sit. They will have nothing to push back against. So when a person attacks you and you don't attack back, they will run out of steam. The whole situation will die down because there's no return energy there. This requires even more discipline because your natural reaction is probably going to want to say something back at them, right? But the payoff is you will have fewer and fewer people agitating with you when they realize, and you develop the reputation as a person who's not going to react no matter what anybody says. People will go find a more convenient target that will give them the energy that they're looking for. Work on your game. Dre, all day.